Hey everyone, welcome to the Referral Candy podcast. This is your host, Raul Galera. With me today is Stefan Pretty, founder and CEO of Subly. Subly.co, that is Subly.co, is a software that allows businesses and individuals to set up and start subscription e-commerce businesses. No coding experience is required, and you can have your store up and running very, very quickly. Stefan, thank you so much for being here. I know you're extremely busy these days.
Yeah, thank you, Raul, for having me. It's always an honor to be invited on to be interviewed for something like this.
So for those of you listening who don't know Stefan, you're from Scotland. You're currently living in LA, Los Angeles, California, and you're running your own tech business. So you're living the dream, man. Tell us how you got here.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to share that with you. I hope you've got like 2 hours because it's a long story. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't worry. We definitely
So yeah, you're right in saying I'm from Scotland. Although my accent probably sounds a little bit funny by now. Yeah, and I'm living in Los Angeles. So the story goes that I used to run a digital marketing agency back in the day. I was actually, I'm a university dropout, technically speaking, and I was doing freelancing on the side, which I eventually dove in full time and started this digital agency called Pretty Clicks, which is a play on my last name, Pretty. And we were doing quite well, and we grew 400% in our last year. And an interesting little twist in the story was when I had a meeting with an ex-girlfriend, actually, and potential client, and she wanted to start.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And she wanted to start this detox juice like subscription service, basically. And subscription was just at the beginning of this, this like explosive trend. And she came in and she was, I've got this budget and I want to do, I need branding, I need your website, I need all the software put together. And I was like, okay, your budget's not the biggest budget in the world, so leave it with us. We'll do some research and see if there's anything on the market that actually exists. So, after the meeting, I went and did some research, came back, meeting number 2, and there wasn't anything. That was the end point. Was there was no solution out there that made this easy, apart from a stack of different plugins for different services, or things that weren't very well known or very established. So that was when I had the light bulb moment in the meeting. It actually might have just been the first meeting all of this happened, where I just pulled up my laptop. But I had the light bulb moment where I was like, "There's an opportunity here," and I've always had this knack in life, and I don't know if it's just intuition or what. I don't want to get big-headed because I'm always worried that this is just going to disappear on me one day. But I've always had a knack for like spotting businesses or opportunities and being like, that's a really awesome idea, and then it actually turning into something really big or somebody doing it and running with it. And I got so fed up with this happening all the time, where I'm like, if only I had X, Y, Z in place to be able to do this business idea. I just had like enough of, ending up in that situation and having this train of thought where I was like, one day this is going to happen. And I was like, no, it's going to happen today. So after that, like, it became really, really clear. I was like, okay, I just needed to iron down the business model. I was like, I've got this, the name came to me like that. It was like instantaneous. The logo was in my head straight away. It just all fell into place really quickly. And the team at Pretty Clicks pulled together real quickly to come up with like the first concept, basically. And then I basically just plowed the resources of that business into starting it, and then eventually I locked myself away and just coded. And eventually we launched version 1. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot more details to the story, but that's how we got going. And then we got picked up by Product Hunt, and some chap from Edinburgh, which is where I was living at the time in Scotland. He actually hunted us on Product Hunt, which was really cool, keeping it local, So after that, we got our first paying customer, which kind of validated the business model. In hindsight, could have done a better job on that and done it even quicker. But I was just that confident in the business model that I just plowed ahead with it and didn't want to miss this opportunity. So flash forward 3 years later, here I am now sitting in Los Angeles. Why am I in Los Angeles? Just fell in love with Santa Monica. I was actually doing a road trip and with one of my good friends, and we were doing San Francisco, and I was meeting with like potential investors and stuff like that at the time. This is before I realized that I preferred the idea of bootstrapping. And we were doing this road trip from San Francisco down to Hermosa Beach, and we stopped off in Santa Monica, and there was a concert on the pier in Santa Monica. And if those of you who haven't been, you need to go if you're in the area. They're usually on Thursday nights in the summer, and the vibe was just amazing. And I was just like, it was September, and I'm sitting in my shorts and t-shirt on a beach, having a glass of wine, and the music's playing of live music on the pier, and I was like, you don't get this and like anywhere.
This is life.
So I just felt, yeah, this is the life. I was like, I have to come back here. So I fell in love with it in that moment and decided to get my business visa. And the other thing was, actually, it turns out that most of our customers are US based, so it just worked perfectly. So I knew that there was better business opportunities out here, and they were more receptive for following the trends of e-commerce out here. So, and just in general, the startup world is just stronger on the west coast of the US than it is in Edinburgh and Scotland. Don't get me wrong, the startup scene in Edinburgh is thriving. It's just not the same caliber, in my opinion. So it was just like the whole picture was there, and then that was it. 3 months later, I was on a plane with my business visa.
So what will be the timeline for this? You've mentioned 3 years. What's the timeline from the moment that you said, aha, there's a real business here, there's money here, until the moment that you had your MVP or your first customer?
Yeah, so the timeline for that was once the idea had been conceptualized, it was probably, I think that was around about October 2014, I'm going to say. Now you're racking my brains, but it actually might have been 2013. Wow. So then it was, because we had our first paying customer, I think it was in July or August of 2014. And we didn't have like any big reveal. We just launched it, and we just got going basically. Yeah, I just went ahead and launched it, and it was embarrassing. It was terrible. It was truly the definition of a minimum viable product. I look back and I'm like, how did we get any recognition with this piece of crap? So
well, we've all heard that saying that goes that if you're not embarrassed of your MVP, you're launched too late, or you've waited too long to launch.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, and I've heard that a couple of times myself now over the years. So basically from idea to launch was probably in the region of 6 months, roughly. Yeah, I mean, I locked myself away for a good 3 months just programming. Greg, one of my old colleagues and developer, he wrote like the initial lines, but then I kind of took over because I think the team realized my heart was in this, and they knew that because it wasn't making any money from before launch. They knew that like they started looking for other jobs, which was, to be honest with you, was perfect. They had I gave them amazing references, and they ended up getting really good jobs. So I'm still, friends with them today, which is great. So yeah, I can't thank them enough. In fact, Greg is honestly top developer, top guy. So yeah, I'm glad I had that sort of support behind me during those during those months. And obviously they saw my conviction, which gives me retrospective confidence that I was powerfully, in the right state of mind, that people were like, okay, this guy's going to do this,
Okay, so let's go back to the first few months of Subly. I'm sure there's people listening to this that are probably in the same position that you were a few years ago. So in behalf of them, I would like to ask you, how do you manage to grow your company from the very first customer to the first 10, 20, 50 customers?
Absolutely. So yeah, back at the beginning, we did a little bit of some paid ads to try and get some initial traction and to validate the business model. But fortunately, I had a lot of experience in search engine optimization, or SEO as it's known, shorthand, and because we used to offer SEO as a service from the digital agency. And a lot of our customers we got from search engine optimization. So we spent a lot of time writing really high quality content from really early on. I think we spent like a good couple of months just writing content nonstop, and it paid off dividends in the long run. So it is a long play strategy, but if obviously there's different niches that have high competitiveness, like they're much more competitive than others. I based on the research I'd done at the time, I knew that this was like what you call a greenscape. So I personally am a massive advocate for search engine optimization and long-term marketing strategies that pay off the dividends and are going to be they're actually like, for example, SEO is highly affordable in the long run. It's expensive to implement, and people say it's super expensive, but if you're good at writing and you know what you're doing, if you just, there's loads of articles out there how to do link building, how to do, optimize your on page SEO, etc. Like they, they yeah, they break it down really nicely. And once you've learned it, you've learned the basic principles. Yeah, the algorithm of Google changes every day, whatever, 400 times a year. The same principles apply. Quality is key. And you can outsource SEO, and yeah, it will cost a lot of money. I honestly always come back to doing it myself or with the people who I trust mostly and who really understand the business 100%. In terms of the like early stage growth, though, like things that I've learned since then that I would like to share include like in fact, let's talk about this for a second in terms of bootstrapping, because we're talking about a software business right now, which is like we built all this code, and then we validated it by getting our first paying customers. But that's not even that lean. And I'm going to talk about lean principles for a second here. If you haven't read it, the Lean Startup by Eric Ries, you need to read it. It's a game changer. It's brilliant, and it's very known in like the startup world. We could have been leaner, but I was just, as I said, like earlier on, I was so convicted with this idea, and the research I'd done, like the primary research, showed that there was a need for this, which is why we just plowed ahead with, not wanting to miss the opportunity. So those circumstances are slightly different, but if I was to do this again, or if I was to start another business, then I would certainly look at, getting, for example, you could just throw a landing page up. There's like loads of different tools out there, like Lead Pages. You could just put a landing page up with an email form, or there's LaunchRock, that's free. And then you can collect email addresses to validate a business idea by just driving like $100 worth of traffic to it with targeted traffic, and being like, this is the offering. Get notified when we're live. That's a form of validation, and it's cheap. You could do that for $100. And there's a ton of other ways of doing it. So if you have an existing business and you're wanting to validate whether or not, big businesses can be agile and lean as well. Say you're thinking about launching a new product, you could just throw up a landing page on your existing website, drive some traffic to it, or tell your existing customers and be like, hey, if you're interested, click this button and you'll be notified when it's live. That's validation. It just means that you're making assumptions and then testing your assumptions, and then you're not doing things that are wasting time, because a lot of people have these assumptions and they don't test it, and then they go out and spend all these hours and thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars building a product that nobody actually wants or needs. So there's that to think about if you're wanting to be lean and bootstrap your business. In terms of growth hacks and other marketing strategies, Growth Hackers is a great source for all these different things, but ultimately, really what I find it comes down to is caring, really, really caring about your product, getting to know your customers, communicating with them, learning what they really need, because then you're going to get word of mouth. And then also implementing like an evergreen strategy that's, like for example, SEO, good quality content that's going to be there, and it's going to rank well on Google, and it's going to, it's going to stand the test of time. But don't get me wrong, rule number one is if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So always be improving as well. And then in terms of other like marketing strategies, you can pay for traffic, but as a bootstrap business, that's quite difficult to do when you don't have any revenue. So just be careful there, because your cost of acquiring a customer, trying to get that down is going to be tricky to get that down to a point where it's sustainable for you at these early stages. So, at those early stages though, your best weapon and your where you can really add value is to get close and build really solid relationships with a small number of people. So, use that time to learn from like your target audience and customer. And there's another thing, know your customer. Like really get to know who your customer persona is, and then who to reach out to and who to target. A lot of people don't do this. It requires discipline, but really sit down, take the time, imagine who is it I'm trying to target, who's the person who's going to use my product, and describe them, write it on a piece of paper. It's a fun exercise. I heard somebody say, even better, just go and Google the first name of the imaginary person on Google and print off a picture of somebody that comes up on Google and put it on your wall next to the persona, and it just makes it more real in your head. So it makes it easier to make those decisions. Like, you know, I think it's kind of a funny idea, but actually makes a lot of sense. It's like, yeah, okay,
Yeah, it's like you're playing trick with yourself. You're
exactly.
playing tricks with your mind. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah, it's like hacking your own brain. How can we then you've got this person's head in face in your head, and you're like, okay, where would I find this person? So yeah, I mean, I think that really covers off what I would do from a bootstrap perspective. It's just like those early stages. It's all about learning and listening to the customers and their feedback and what they want. You know, because we spend so much time like, oh, I've got this great idea, and then you're like, you know, you spend all this time thinking about this idea, but not really actually talking to people about it. And then, you know, another thing that people do as well, which is crazy, is they get all secretive about their ideas. They're like, oh, this is the $1 billion idea.
yeah,
And then they don't talk to anybody about it. I've done this. I've been there. I've
you have to
done this
sign
actually.
NDAs and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
NDAs. That's
Yeah.
craziness. Like, okay, I'm not going to steal your idea because, like,
Right.
I've got enough on my plate. Everybody's got enough on their plate. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's busy
Mm-hmm.
doing their own thing. And ideas are, I always say this, ideas are cheap and execution's expensive.
I actually want to stop here for a second because you're talking about the importance of having conversations, talking to customers, especially in the early stages of the life of the company. But I feel like that's important at any stage of the business, and especially you guys who are working on subscription. Retaining customers is crucial for the health of your business.
Mm.
Because when I hear interviews to entrepreneurs, they always ask them how to grow your user base, how to grow your customer
Yep.
base, and I actually just ask you the same question. But we don't hear often enough. How do you retain customers? And retaining customers is extremely important because if you have a client that keeps buying from you, all these fixed costs related to customer acquisition are gone, and it's pretty much all profit from there. So, what do you guys do to stay focused on user retention, and what tips can you share with us?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And actually, this is becoming more of a topic that I guess I'm starting to like become more focused on as well over the years. I mean, this is critical in any business that has a subscription element. In fact, any business full stop. So, you know, you've got, as you mentioned, like you've got the cost of acquiring a customer, and then you have the LTV, which is your lifetime value. And these are probably the two most important metrics because your cost of acquiring a customer could be anywhere from 30 to, you know, say $100, right, in today's day and age. And then, you know, people could be, you know, only making a slither of money off the top of that if their lifetime value is like $110, for example. So the goal is to always try and get as much value out of each customer that you acquire. So yeah, retention is a huge part of that for a subscription business. So and in terms of retention, you know, the word that goes with that hand in hand is churn. So a churn is basically the percentage of customers who cancel each month, and you would give that like a value in terms of a percentage, and then you'd have like say your churn could be like 6 months or 9 months or whatever, and that's basically saying the customer you know, will likely cancel on average after X number of months. So you want that to be as long as possible. So, you know, that just to explain that to any listeners about what we're talking about here. So yeah, in terms of retention strategies, yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. Always, you know, listen to your customers at all stages of your business. I think I'm just saying that like the early stages, you have the luxury of being able to get close as the founder and CEO of your company to your customers, which you should relish and absolutely make the most of. Because on the other hand, the customers feel like they're really, you care about them a lot as well, and that's something that not every business gives you that sort of an experience. So, but yeah, number one is listen to your customers, learn what they want, collect feedback, and quantify it, and then act on it, action it, and prioritize as well. So say it's feature based feedback, you want to find out what customers are wanting and implementing it. But then also as a caveat, don't get caught up in just building features to retain a customer, because sometimes it's the core product that actually has a problem. Because a lot of people get caught up in, if I build this feature, this feature, this feature, and this feature, because they're comparing themselves to other businesses, or they have like in their idea the perfect product that has all these features, because people think more features equals better product. It doesn't always mean that. And actually, as I said, sometimes it's the core product. And if you find that you've got like a churn problem, you might need to take a step back and really, really evaluate what is the one thing that adds the most value, or the one thing that's missing that, you know, needs to be reevaluated and focused down on and doubled down on to make to get it right. So that's a really hard question to answer in terms of that when you're thinking about your own business. But sometimes it is a core like a core business model issue or value problem. Other strategies include ultimately that's what it comes down to. Like there's no like secret recipe. I mean, there's lots of little things you can do to improve retention. Like for example, offering upsells to like get people on annual plans. Like, you could offer, a 2 or 3 months for free if they switch to an annual plan, but then you're asking them to outlay money, which is quite difficult. So that's why it's quite difficult to get customers to commit to that. But it's one strategy of doing it. Another is, just engaging with the customer at multiple different points in their journey or their relationship with you. So maybe you reach out to them in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, etc. Just keeping the relationship going, and you can automate that. And then obviously, as I mentioned, it's like constantly improving your product and showing people that you're active and listening to feedback. Another thing is you could do is build a kind of a community around your business as well. I think that's quite powerful. But yeah, it comes down to like the core value proposition. Sometimes like, we think we know when, we're actually distracted by everything else apart from the main core part of the product itself, that could be not quite right. And once you get that nailed, everything else will fall into place, I think.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. I'm stopping real quick to talk to you about Referral Candy. If you're struggling to get new customers or are looking for ways to retain your existing ones, why not running a referral program? Your customers can spread the word about your store, invite their friends, and get something in return. Did you know that running a referral program is one of the most cost-effective customer acquisition strategies out there? With Referral Candy, you can have your referral program set up in a matter of minutes, no coding required. Just go to referralcandy.com and start your 30-day free trial. Again, that is referralcandy.com and get your first month for free. Now back to the interview. I was just going to mention the fact that you guys have this online community. By the way, any of you who are either subscription e-commerce entrepreneurs or are thinking of becoming one, I strongly recommend you to search on Facebook Subscription Box Entrepreneurs, and it's a group that it's managed by Subly, and I personally think that you guys have done a great job. You're constantly adding new content to the group, and it's also for you guys as a company. I think first of all, it's a great way to keep in touch with your customers. You can reach out to them and announce things, I would say in a less intrusive way, and it feels like a community. And I feel like every time you share a new update or a feature or whatever it is, I feel like people will be more interested and more willing to engage with that content. And second, at the end of the day, this community is a great source of help for your sales slash support team, because you either have existing customers or people that want to start their own business, and they have questions. They have questions about the platform, about starting up their business, and they get instant feedback from other users. You get other business owners answering their questions. So you get this collective feedback that I think it's great in so many ways. But now that we're talking about user retention, I think this is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you know what? We started this group only this year, and it's been awesome. And I appreciate the kind words on that. I think we're actually really quite strict about it. Like we have a lot of group rules, and we enforce them quite strongly.
You kind of have to.
Yeah, quality is key.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who come on and try and solicit, clients, etc. And we're quite strict with that. And like, we really encourage people to engage and like, share knowledge with one another, because a lot of this is education as well. It depends on your product, but ours, a lot of it's to do with learning how to run a business and, doing so successfully. For example, though, you're right. Like, we also get that feedback loop because we can see what people's problems and struggles are, and then we can try and address those in terms of our own message or documentation, or how we handle customers through our actual support, or the actual product itself, of course. So we have this like feedback loop, which is great, and it's also a great source for like, we could write content, that it helps solve these people's problems. Like there's guys who don't know how to do this, or there's people sharing ideas that will help other people, and we can collectively create more educational materials, and that just benefits everybody. And the reason we run this community is actually just for the community. It's like we want to help people, and I think that's foundational for entrepreneurs. It's kind of like the pay it forward mentality. um yeah, I think it really does close that kind of feedback loop. And actually, interestingly, because I'm on there, answering questions and giving, feedback, etc., it's actually allowed me to stay close to the customer as well. Because I used to do customer support on my own when it was just like me, like as a one man band. And eventually, it kind of obviously, time constraints as the business grew continually, I wasn't able to do that realistically all the time on my own. So, now we have, full-time customer support, but the Facebook group is like my way of staying connected to the audience and the customers. And, not all our customers are on our Facebook group, and not all of our Facebook group members are our customers. But it doesn't matter. Like, we're still learning from one another. Yeah. We're still learning from one another, and it's awesome. But yeah, communities, I think, more important than people realize. And I mean, I learned this the hard way as well, because we kind of neglected that. But the penny dropped, and it really started to click when when we actually did it. Does that make sense? Like, it was kind of like the chicken and the egg. Once we actually did it, it was like, okay, this is how this works. That's why this is important. So yeah, community is important. Depends on your product, but yeah, usually it's important.
Yeah, definitely, it's important. I've actually talked to the companies with the most successful referral program we've seen here at Referral Candy, and there's something in common with all of them, and it's the fact that they all have an online community, usually on Facebook, with very active users, and it really helps for many reasons. It might not be the best solution for all industries. And I think that at some point we might hit some sort of saturation here, having too many communities that we're not able to keep up with. But it's something that I see that it's happening on Facebook right now, and it's that people are starting to share more stuff on groups than on their own timeline, and they're turning to groups instead. I think, well, it's like Facebook, it's becoming way too social. I think that now people are starting to go into groups where people are more like-minded, or they're there to discuss a topic in particular. And I think that this is not only the present, but the future on how brands interact with their customers on Facebook. We are probably hitting the end of Facebook pages as we know them, as community builders, let's say, and I see them more like big advertising banners in a way to broadcast your ads. So you guys have done, again, a really, really, really good job with your community. And there's something I wanted to ask you. What's something that you guys have tried over the past few years that you didn't think it was going to work, but it actually did, and you were surprised by the results?
It's a great question. I would say that the one thing that actually has worked well for us is having a great customer support experience, and also a super fast response time. So here's a quick example of that. About a year and a half ago, I was sitting working away, and I got a tweet notification. Now, I'm not the best Twitter user in the world. I've really had to teach myself to be disciplined to get to use it. It's just funny how certain platforms stick with different people for different reasons. I'd love to look at that from a psychological perspective, but for me, I tried to be disciplined with it, and we got this tweet from a company called Jenny's, and they do awesome ice cream. I'm sure some of you have heard of this company, but they tweeted us and said, "Hey, we're looking to do this, and does your software do this?" And we responded within like a minute, 2 minutes or something like that, and they were so impressed by that response rate that they ended up becoming a customer, doing like an enterprise grade solution with us. So they're a really cool company, and I'm really proud to be working with them. It's exciting. So that was like kind of unexpected, and it mostly came down to the fact that we were so responsive and so fast at getting back to them. And I would always say that like customer support is kind of like your product at the end of the day. You can have software, but it's nothing if there's nobody running the business correctly, or people that aren't there to support the people, because there's always going to be people wanting answers and questions. They're going to have questions, and they're going to need answers. So I would say that ironically, customer support is a part of your marketing in a way. So yeah, don't neglect that.
I'll actually go beyond that and say that probably the most important asset that you have in your company is the person who's in front of your customer talking to them.
Mm,
Because they're being the voice of the company, they're representing the company, but also, yeah, I mean, being responsive and getting back to your customers for leads
yeah.
quickly can really
Or
make a difference.
that's a really, really great point, Raul, actually. Yeah, I mean, if you're an expert in your field, or if you know what you're talking about, or if you just want to have like a face of the business, it's an effective strategy. I don't like calling things necessarily strategies, but at the end of the day, like, people want strategies. So let's call it a strategy. But if you've got a business as well, there's an opportunity to actually create a relationship through you as a real human being. Because most businesses shy away from this. I'm getting more to grips with this myself personally. I've got over a decade of experience with, like, web and online marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And only in recent months even have I realized that my knowledge can actually be useful and beneficial to somebody else. So um, yeah, I'm starting to become more and more the face of the business, and not shying away from it. So it's difficult to do, though, I'll admit that, but it definitely seems to be resonating with the our customers and our community, and it feels good to be able to help.
And it pays off for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. In terms of calling it strategy, yeah, I would agree with that.
And at the end of the day, it's all about being transparent and telling your customers who you are,
Oh, 100%.
and letting them know that there's a person just like them running the company behind the
Yeah.
screen. Just
I'll,
showing
I'll
your
I'll never
face.
forget. We wrote this. I wrote this manifesto. If you go on our website, although we might be reorganizing it soon, it says "Why Subly." If you click on it, I wrote a manifesto, and it's quite edgy, but it really came from the heart. And for so long, I was like, we've got competitors out there, who are bigger businesses than us, and we. For so long, I was always unsure of whether or not we should reveal that we're this small little business, and what our story is, etc. And then eventually one day I was like, just do it, just go for it, and just be honest and open, and it might resonate with somebody. And it's funny that manifesto has been shared quite considerably, to my surprise. And from me starting to tell the story of Subly, like today, me sharing the story with you guys, is that's part of that whole process of being transparent and open and honest, and telling people the journey, and it seems to be that people can get something from hearing about that as well. Like, they can learn from that.
And if your customers are small businesses as well, it's a way of telling them, "Hey, I'm just like you. We are
Yeah,
probably having the same
absolutely.
problems. We can definitely help each
Yeah.
other out."
And it's all it because entrepreneurship's a lonely, lonely road. And it takes a special type of person to embark upon that mission. And I actually see people on our community, on our Facebook group, for example, saying, like, you know, um, they're sharing like the emotional burden as well with other people, and they're like, I feel insecure about this, or I'm not sure of myself. And it's great to see other people being like, yeah, me too, yeah, me too, because that's what will actually allow them to feel strong enough to continue, I think. And it's almost like a group of therapists as well, I guess you could say.
Oh, well, it is. I mean, it definitely helps. And if your community can help someone stick with their idea, even after, I don't know, maybe they're not going through the best of times, or they're getting bad feedback, or, they think the business is not going to work,
Yeah.
it's, it can,
Yeah,
it can really help them.
there's that classic picture that people share every now and again, which is the path to success is not a straight line. It's like a rocky road, and there's like pits of death, and there's bridges you have to cross, and spikes coming out of the ground, etc., etc. It's so true. And there's gonna, with another thing as well, is that you can't have highs without lows. If everything was easy and straightforward, everybody would first of all be doing it. Second of all, yeah, everybody would be successful and have their business and their dream business and be in their dream situation, but they're not, because there's a reason for that. So it is a lonely journey, and it's good to have people around you. So pick your friends wisely, get involved with communities that can help you. And yeah, I mean, going full circle here, you can always do more with less. That's like my number one thing right now. You can always do more with less, and I'm having to remind myself of this as well. So yeah.
And just to wrap up with the interview, which again, I really appreciate that you took your time to talk to us today, Stefan. We've actually learned a lot from you today. But before we go, there's one thing I would like to ask you. We've talked about growing your customer base, user retention, the importance of building a community around your business. But for those businesses who have already been up and running for a few years but are struggling to grow their revenue, they can't really figure it out how to take it to the next level. What's something that they can do to increase revenue and basically just take their business to the next level? Just take that next step.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. We've spoken about bootstrapping. So let's talk about existing businesses for a second. Yeah, great question. So I think one thing that people don't realize, entrepreneurs and business owners alike, they don't realize that it's easier to sell to an existing customer than it is to acquire a new customer. You have an existing relationship with your current customers, and even the ones who are no longer a customer but were a customer. So one thing that I would say is that don't just treat your business as like a rotating door. Try and turn that rotating door into like a an actual like an experience, a journey, where you've got an entrance point, and then you try and keep that experience going for as long as possible. So one way that is effective for doing that, ironically, and a lot of businesses think that it doesn't apply to them, is actually, first of all, not only doing just upsells, but also applying a continuity model or a subscription model to their existing business. It's not applicable to 100% of businesses, but it definitely is applicable to more businesses than people realize or would even consider. So yeah, like adding that continuity model is pretty critical, and as a way of increasing revenues and increasing that, as we mentioned earlier, that lifetime value. So it's not necessarily it's something that should be considered an effective way for increasing the revenue of a business quite quickly if you have an existing business with customers and revenue coming in. And then, the other one is obviously upsells, to create like kind of like a value ladder. So you've got your core products, say you're doing e-commerce, and then you want to do upsells to these little add-on products. And then, as I said, like you could add subscription on the side, which is kind of sitting alongside that value ladder. You start to create a much more, first of all, you increase your lifetime value. You're not going to get everybody on these upsells and the continuity model, but it still contributes towards it. And these things aren't that difficult to set up anymore. We've got all the technology and solutions out there. Like, for example, Subly does subscription, and you can add Subly to an existing business, quite easily. So you can implement that and test it. Again, we could stay, talking about bootstrapping and being lean. You could implement that really quickly and cost effectively with all these existing tools and solutions. Of course, you have to do the marketing for it, but again, it's easier to sell to an existing customer than it is to acquire a new customer. So these are some really important considerations for increasing your revenue for an existing business. It's something I'm going to be doing more. I'm going to be discussing more in the future and sharing more knowledge on. But yeah, just as a sidebar, if you are interested, we do have a 14-day free trial as well. I can send you the links and stuff after this, Raul, if you want to put it into the notes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to insist on this, guys. If you're thinking about setting up a subscription business, a subscription box, I can't recommend Subly enough. You can go on subly.co. Again, that is subly.co, and start a 14-day trial. They're an amazing team. They're led by Stefan, so you can't really go wrong with that. Stefan, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for coming to the Referral Candy podcast. It was a pleasure.
Oh, you're so welcome, Raul, and thank you so much for having me. And it's always a pleasure. And if you ever want to talk shop again, just let me know, and I'm always happy to share my story and knowledge. And you guys can always hit me on Twitter as well if you want.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
No worries. Take care.